Starfox Assault isn't the only Starfox sequel. There? Huh? See? I tricked you. It's a clickbait. It's not true.
That's right, it's not true. But it feels true.
1993 saw Nintendo release their first 3D game on a home console, Starfox, a space-based shooter, acting as an incredible demonstration of a technology that, maybe seems less than incredible once you put more than two objects on screen, yet still struck a chord with an audience because of its ingenious decision to turn to us and say, hey, you won't believe who's in there. This almost abstract experience of geometric shapes made a connection to us in its framing. Top Gun, as performed by the animals of Farthing Wood. The light-hearted cartoon characters contrasted against intense space opera action that made it super endearing. It was Starfox that made this not just a game, but a franchise, and ensured someday they'd probably do this again, which was the plan. And they did. Eventually. Starfox 2 had been in active development, the plans to build on the story and mechanics of the original well documented, but technology was moving so fast with the upcoming Nintendo 64, the project suddenly felt like it was behind the curve, which is how we got Starfox 64, not a sequel, but a reboot. Taking the same story and basic concept of the original, with Fox and the gang going up against the forces of the insane scientist Andros, 64 did even more to bridge the gap between brand and game, able to better realize the characters beyond key art and expand on the drama, with the introduction of rival team Starwolf, new set pieces or bosses, and a revamped final encounter with Andros himself, while leaning even more heavily on Star Wars influence, especially in Britland. The idea was for this version of the game to be an introduction for a new generation of fans, and I imagine, for a lot of you, it's the version you think of when you think of Starfox. It felt like a very complete take, from the gameplay to the characters to the music, pushed as a mainstay of the Nintendo gang. But for all that success, it was never quite followed up on the way some of us hoped. This is where things get rightfully contentious, because I do think there are very real arguments to be had about where you might draw the line on what constitutes as a true sequel. But for me, the guy making the video, it ain't happened, mate. Another new console gave us Adventures, a fulsome next-gen experience, which chose to move the story on, but not the gameplay, pivoting instead to an entirely different genre, as Fox went on an action-adventure with dinosaurs, which was, interesting. Some fans were left cold, and for me it's hard to even count because of its history. This was initially intended as a completely new and original game by Rare, dressed up at the last minute as a Starfox title, and unfortunately knowing that makes it almost impossible not to see the ghost of what it was lurking beneath, which is fascinating and very weird.
A lovely sweetie.
We would return to pure space action, but unfortunately, most of these games would share a common problem. There's the 64 remaster on 3DS, making use of the gyroscopic controls and hilariously short-lived gimmick, but is just 64 again. Then in the Wii U era, they hired Platinum to make a brand new game, and they did. Another reboot, almost just 64 again. Big quotes around the almost, different controls, I'll give you that. As I was writing this, they finally announced a brand new title. I wonder what this will be. Oh my god, they've done it again! It's 64 again!
Again and again until we're both dead.
Fox's dad betrayed, Andros on the rise, Star Fox up against Starwolf every single time. Listen, I get it, these are not carbon copies, there are things about some of those reboots I like, and I get what you might see in some of them, unless you played Zero on an emulator and based your opinion on that, because frankly you don't understand why playing it is kind of a nightmare. I am, however, flummoxed by how this franchise seems to have gotten away with doing the same story 4 times. Not that Nintendo is a stranger to that concept, arguably, but in this case, quite literally being the same narrative experience every single time does seem short-sighted, making playing all of these back-to-back very funny. At a certain point, you have to wonder if there isn't something else that could be done here. If they couldn't find a way to frame this franchise beyond one story and see if that sparks anything interesting. And I'm being incredibly cheeky because you already heard how I started this video, you've already seen the thumbnail, and you know which game I am leaving out. 2004 Starfox Assault is already better than this whole video because it just starts.
All ships, avoid the Armada's fire. Aim for Awakening's flagship.
Here we go! Hey, Snippy, don't get cocky.
You're booted up and you're in, shown immediately a vision of the Fox universe where everything has moved on, familiar but different. Same team, plus girl. Same gear, but fly. Same mission, new boss. The first oh of course moment in a series of those as you witness the consequences of that overtold story, flung into the action of an all-out space war underscored like magic. This is as strong a tone setter as you could hope for. The production values and scope of the concept raised so immediately that you adjust to this being the gang's new normal, to the point where it's kind of a joke. Compared to Andros, his former Star Wolf pilot's Nepo baby nephew isn't much of a threat, his army quite easily beaten back, and himself forced to become a pathetic imitation of his uncle. Monkey see and do, I guess. It's very close to the game outright going, oh, here we go again, this is what we do here, the head and hands boss, this is Starfox. But Assault is not a repeat of Glory's past.
That doesn't look friendly.
A new alien threat, the Aperoids, descend en masse across the galaxy, an abrupt introduction of a hive-minded insectoid robot army with the intention of assimilating all organic matter into their colony. The change of villain leads to a change of pace in the narrative, bringing out familiar faces in new contexts, and forcing Fox and the gang to go to war against something that could only have worked so well in the AA era, really sparking the imagination of what this brand could offer and earning the title it's been given, even if it's far from perfect. The sad and slightly bitter truth, as well as I can set this up, is that it's still not the best game in the series, nor better mechanically than what came before. Its reception muted at the time it came out for entirely understandable reasons. But now, living in a world where a true sequel never arrived, Assault offers something else. A surprisingly fresh perspective on the Starfox brand I feel should be recognised, and why certain fans who experienced it might want to see a little more of this concept in future games than they might feel they've ever seen since. And that is the thing, the big contradiction. All this presentation spent on what feels weirdly budgeted, and I think probably led to some of the disappointment on its release, or at least from what I've read in the magazines anyway. It's worth thinking about the quality of the main games that existed beforehand, when these people didn't have anything else to compare it to. Both Starfox and 64 were incredibly strong, highly replayable experiences as on-rail shooters, with branching paths and high-score opportunities to improve on with each playthrough. I would even argue that, as good as 64 is, the original has held up as its own unique beast. The limitations offer a special challenge where you're tasked with running Fox through the entire adventure at once, having to pay attention to both the well-being of your crew and your ship. And while 64 offers more chances and breaks to fix both, Starfox offers a stronger sense of endurance that makes you feel by the end like you and your team really came through that ordeal together. Assault, on the other hand, feels halfway between an arcade experience and a full campaign in a way I don't think quite comes together. The stages this time around are standalone, without joint continuity on your team's well-being, and while there are classic on-rail sections and high scores to achieve on replays, there are many more sections where you can get out of the ships and run around on foot, blasting away at hordes of enemies. These parts all feel fairly weightless, Fox and co practically zipping along the ground as they run and gun, the map's barren and on occasion confusing to get your head around. And I can't say that, outside of the very last stage, which is absurdly overdrawn, the rest of the levels offer all that much of a challenge. The whole thing almost over and done with in about 3 hours or less, perhaps the reason it feels that way being down to its original plan. There's an odd history here that's still fairly speculative, but at the time, Nintendo Racer F-Zero GX had a very successful launch not just on home consoles, but in arcades, and it wasn't long after that they announced a collaboration with Namco alongside a potential Starfox project, the belief being it would follow this strategy given Namco's history. That didn't happen, but they did begin Assault's life with a focus on multiplayer, the campaign added late in the process, and, well, it shows. While the actual gameplay loops have potential, the objectives are pretty bland, seeking out targets on a mini-map and taking them out between hordes of enemies. I don't dislike that on principle though, and there's definitely things about its construction that work for me. The Grease Monkey aesthetic of 64 was a fantastic choice that used the stylization of the N64's blocky visuals to its advantage, while the GameCube's extra power amps up the Y2K aesthetic and reflects Fox and the gang's promotion to an elite fighting force. The incredible speed and lightweight nature of the new R-Wings kind of a joy to control, running around maps where you can just dive in and out of the cockpit, exploring caves and strongholds but dashing out to help your team when they call. It captures what you'd hope a next-level Starfox experience would feel like, fast and frantic. And if most of it wasn't over and done with by the time you'd made a mug of tea, it'd make for a hell of an experience to revisit. It worked well enough for the multiplayer, as intended, which got a lot of use in my house at the time. I just wish I could have all of that rise above the promise of potential Fox, you know? The real irony of that slapdash campaign, however, is that the narrative is actually the most eye-opening part of the package, comedically heightened by the fact they've never done this again. This isn't really a video talking about why Assault is a hidden gem or underrated classic, as much as demonstrating how the bare minimum doesn't even seem to be in conversation anymore. And even with some ropey bits of mocap presentation and interesting choices, Assault has a soul to its narrative that shockingly resonates, cementing my belief that a sequel should absolutely still be on the cards. One of the things Assault has that truly makes it feel like a sequel is pure, unadulterated confidence. The game isn't ashamed of any perceived mistakes, it just strides forward and makes decisions that, for better or worse, feel like the universe is moving ahead. Already discussed is the idea of this team as existing in a more official capacity, like General Pepper raised the budget as a reward and not because it otherwise looked like he was cheaping out on world safety by offering it to mercenaries. They made a lot of the aesthetic in the promos for this thing, the gang voguing in their slick new duds, Falco looking particularly extra. Feels like turning up at the last moment in Adventures and taking the credit went to his head. Well, let's face it, can't really blame him for checking out of that one. I like seeing all the decisions that build on what these people might be like after previous successes, rather than trying to re-establish them for the third time, even acknowledging the more controversial stuff, in particular Crystal, whose inclusion no doubt got a certain corner of the internet to stand up and clap. Not that this will help me beat the allegations, but I think her inclusion really works. Starfox 2 had always intended to put more women on the team, who are more officially part of everything now, but what I think separates Crystal from them is the fact she's a telepath. Her unique skill set is actually a great conceptual device for the pilots, where, while they're all trigger-happy men of action, she can sense what's on the battlefield and read the minds of enemies, a tactical counterpoint and slick way to get exposition across without anyone having to leave the ship. Just shorthands a bunch of stuff while making real use of her presence. It's the same dynamic they used on Bucky O'Hare, and there's a reason it worked, which is just Starfox before Starfox.
This is my first mate Jenny and my gunner, Deadeye Duck.
Dan buckle saluting, we don't do that, Cap.
God, I'm never beating the allegations, am I? Oh well. Sick intro though. Her taking a pilot seat means Peppy retires his position to take on a director's role with Rob, and it suits him rather well. I understand the fun of having this guy out there with the others, but I think he works best in the supporting role. A direct connection to Fox's father as one of the original team, and ergo the one most able to act as an authority in his place, was honestly the first time I felt the appeal of the character. Maybe it's in part thanks to them finally finding a voice that suits him.
They're almost all common scum, in it for the money.
Which Rare very much did not.
Oh, fuck!
Fox himself has evolved a little, always quite heroic, but now with an added edge of confidence I don't think was there before, making little sarcastic comments on the effectiveness of the operation like he's seen it all before.
Hey, good to see the transmission system's targeting is as sterling as ever.
His conviction seems to sell his place on the team the most, proving he was right to remain the leader, which is lucky given whose name's on the stationery. It's the way all the characters from 64 feel like they found their next place in the story, which is weirdly impressive, feeling like every choice they've made actually lines up perfectly with what we want to see happen next, and making you feel like the possibilities for future tales are much less limited than they seemed. We even meet Slippy's dad, if you ever wanted that to happen, I guess. This is of course maybe ignoring the fact the American release was even more limited in expressing its story, which for some reason took out all the emotion in the performances. I'm not sure what was going on there. Other places to go if you want that, I guess.
They're 100% stock. Yeah, I guess so.
Oh yeah, that's right. Starwolf, they're back as well, missing a member or two, and with one new guy on board. This splintering of the group is a super neat continuation. We've already seen Oikoni ditch his teammates to try and become the next Andros, dying as he lived. Wolf, however, goes fully independent with Leon and a new teammate, a chauvinist panther called, Panther. And the choice to rebrand changes the dynamic between him and Fox completely. Starwolf is no longer a group of bad guys trying to help conquer the galaxy. They're space outlaws in it for a love of the game. And that in turn has a knock-on effect where it becomes, to me, the best version of the team. Now they feel like true rivals. And while they always had a killer theme song, it was very much created for a group of bad guys, designed for fast battles and tense dogfights. With the rebrand comes a reorchestration, one that becomes the ultimate version of who they are, a tribute to an outlaw's freedom, their love of adventure, as if it was a pure romance.
Remember this, Fox. Starwolf will take you down one day.
It's so crazy. Orchestrated soundtracks in games can be a mixed bag, but Assault does, I feel, benefit from the full ticket. Not only are the compositions themselves already just great, this is the evolution of what Starfox's sound has always been. For all the cartoon trappings, they've always been aiming for a sincere tone, the characters taking this all totally at face value. It's why when you hear some of the tracks adapted from 64, they feel like they've always been there, almost destined to be heard this way eventually. It does help that the elevation of the threats appear to match, and where I think in some respects Assault actually surpasses the previous title. 64 is a great retelling of the original, but I don't think it capitalizes much on the premise. There are wrinkles evident in that original text crawl that felt like they were going to get expanded on somewhere down the line, and thankfully Assault is the game where it happens, with the wrinkliest of them all. You have to understand, Pigma was highlighted directly as the guy who sold Fox's dad down the river, and the next thing we know he's flying around with Starwolf trying to blast you out of the sky.
That reward is good as mine!
That's pretty much the extent of that, but Assault actually grabs the pigskin and runs with it to a logical conclusion, having now also been kicked out of Starwolf, as proven by this detail, and looking for his next gig as a greedy bounty hunter and eternal turncoat. He undercuts our mission so he can sell the Aperoid's data, not realizing that in doing so he's selling out the entire galaxy. So greedy, he hasn't foreseen how this will all inevitably end.
I won't turn a profit by obeying them.
It ends up being a perfect continuation of Pigma's arc, using him not only to further the plot, but to thematically take him to his most extreme point. Pigma's entire life was about betrayal. He betrayed James McLeod, he betrayed Starwolf, he betrayed the entire universe, but only because this was leading up to the person his selfish actions would always ultimately betray. Himself. That's all, folks. Now, I'm selling all of this very dramatically, but I'm well aware this is also kind of hysterical because, you know, he's a pig, which is what spiritually feels so in keeping with how this series began. Like I said before, it's the marriage of that intensity against the silly little animals playing this all out that offers its appeal. Both inherently comic, but also investable. But I actually think Assault gets dangerously close to saying something meaningful about this for a change.
Machines are machines, after all. Those without strong wills can be easily turned to evil.
Those without strong wills, allies or enemies?
What is it, Fox?
Nothing. That sounds like someone I know, that's all.
The Aperoids are sort of the perfect antithesis to everything the franchise stands for, a faceless, formless colony of insect robots that are completely homogeneous, the logic of the designs almost mushing together and perfectly suited to the AA graphics of the era, where they're both super detailed and indistinct, a lot of room for misinterpretation, which is to the benefit of their particular goals. Seeing these things roaming all over the Fox universe, taking over the minds and bodies of all these cartoon animal people, well, it's kind of upsetting, like Pibby, but good. Which is why I think it works that we hold off on showing Fox's most iconic opening level, Corneria, until the midst of the invasion, selling that these things really have become unstoppable. It's why I like having Wolf and the gang team up with Fox to take on a common enemy, and why we really hit peak comedy when we realize the Aperoids have gone straight to the top for the best boss in the series.
They took me. My body is no longer under my control. No. This is my final request. Destroy this ship. Destroy me.
Don't say that. I can't.
You would make me an accomplice to these fiends.
That's the truth of it. Accept it, Fox.
Why? Why is this happening?
It gets funnier and funnier every time I think about it, while also remaining ridiculously hype. Even the very concept that, of course, General Pepper's power level is high enough that turning against you would always have been a problem, and how you have to fight him while standing out in the open on an R-Wing, with a giga-sized bazooka now soaked with Fox's salty tears. There's so much going on here at once. Fox's disbelief, the team's mournful cries of mercy, Wolf's complete indifference, and all while the General desperately pleads with you to let him die with dignity as he rams into your face.
Let me keep my honor, Fox.
This moment is everything I think the Fox brand should be doing. Just that unapologetic level of true space opera sincerity delivered by a fox and a dog from the Lonely Hearts Club Band. Suck it, Paw Patrol.
Peppy!
Peppy, what have you done?
Looks like I'll never make retirement now.
Honestly, the way Peppy's put through the ringer in this game is a large part of why I think his character is so much more investable in this title than ever before.
Damage capacity exceeded.
Too bad. We're going out in style.
That's the joy of doing a continuation, seeing how far you can stretch the characters, find out what they're capable of doing.
Go! Get out of here!
Enough! Peppy's opened a road for us. We've got to move on. Without him!
And that moment does build to a very satisfying finale, possibly the best part of the campaign. The Aperoids, having claimed everything, force the Fox crew to journey to the center of their hive, where their queen lies in wait, in true nightmarish D-Reaper fashion. I gotta say, it was super refreshing to get here without having Andros show up, as fun a villain as he is. Adventure's not great, but it would have probably felt a lot less slapdash if they'd gone with Dinosaur Planet's original twist villain as the final big bad, and not some jobber followed up by the most ass-pull attempt to remind you it was supposed to be considered a sequel. This feels far more correct, and even better, it puts a spin on the ending of 64, where Fox hears a voice from his past telling him how to break free.
That's enough. There's no need for you to be hurt anymore.
The use of James here is a great reversal. In 64, it felt like that moment was Fox kind of getting a chance to realise his father would be proud of him and accepting he'd managed to avenge his death. But still, in his mind or in reality, it's not clear, saving him in some fashion. Here, it's actually twisted into something evil and used to allow Fox to make his own choice, prove himself by recognising what it was about his real father he actually admired. And while the Aperoid Queen attempts to fool him with the voices of his past,
Fox, there's no need to fight anymore.
Let us live together. Together. Live as one.
it's a different voice that lets him truly discern reality.
Don't hesitate. When the time comes, just act.
Everyone, let's give the Queen her present.
It's some sleight here, shit dog. Look, even the final form of the final boss has some thematic perfection going on. Tries to pass herself off as this perfect, unemotional being, turning everything around it into controlled AI slop, but break through the facade and you get this angry ball of impotent rage that's just as emotional and just as ugly as everything else in life, getting smaller and more obnoxious as it tries to escape. It's Shakespearean.
To be or not to be. Not to be.
That's the end of the Queen.
The destruction of the Aperoid Queen does lead to an incredibly cheesy extended scene of backpatting, but it's not like they haven't earned it. Even as a less mechanically able experience, what Assault does is strengthen the appeal of the franchise, why the characters matter in this format, and why I still have the itch to see what they could do in the future that isn't just a repeat of the past.
She tried to bypass evolution by stealing souls, but you have to be born with one.
It's a real message, alright. Something about these daring pilots proving it's the silly creatures inside the machines, and not the machines themselves, that matter, in the same romantic manner as cowboys or pirates, or any genre where free beings tame the spirit of adventure. It's the proof of the individual's power. A combination of talented folks coming together to overcome homogenized, soulless slop, and something about that man just makes my heart take flight.
My friends, thank you.
It's fairly obvious part of my enjoyment here is the way that it made me feel at the time that I played it. The GameCube was really pumping out weird and offbeat continuations of pretty much all its franchises, throwing more at the wall than just standard sequels to their 64 contemporaries, and why I wasn't quite as excited by the material we ended up getting some years on. Assault fits really well into that stable, and I don't think, in all honesty, that feeling is coming back anytime soon. Maybe Command is at fault here. I was pretty excited about this at the time, not only because seeing all these 3D franchises show up on a handheld was cool, but because doing a handheld Star Fox felt like a good fit, and it was promising to continue the Assault storyline, doing a lot of natural nods to what was already established, with a few details I felt on the surface were ingenious. That is just what he should be forever now. Keep bringing him back like that. Look, they even had fish people. Unfortunately, Command wasn't a great game, and maybe because it goes too far in the opposite direction, by having so much story. While I appreciate the effort to harken back to Star Fox 2, given they thought it would never come out, there are reams of bad dialogue and story choices that result in a disastrous set of alternate endings, almost as if they were deliberately sabotaging this current line of canon to make you want another reboot. Terrible. And it's a little disappointing the decision seems to have been made by Nintendo to cater more and more frequently to hitting the remake button. My hope has always been that this can't be forever, that once they get this out of their system and make the money they're otherwise not getting from extended major project deadlines, we'll be back to regular programming. But unfortunately, Star Fox kinda serves as proof that maybe they can just do this forever. Maybe this will just be an ever-revolving door of reinterpretations of that one experience, and even if it isn't, the next one will only continue this new version of the story and not Assault, which I wouldn't be against, but given how happy I was with its direction, I now feel quite conflicted about. Not that it's a problem for them, I guess, as an elder millennial with the clock ticking on, dictating that I can't critique baby games forever. Can I? Yet, Assault at least happened, and I think people who've rediscovered it recently have been surprised by just how fresh it feels within the canon, including me. When replaying it for this video, against all the other Star Fox games, I was also taken aback how, even for all its flaws, it just felt differently valued in my hands now, all these years on, making me look at Zero and wondering, had it also made the decision to be a sequel, if the feeling around that game would have been somewhat different. Taking a lot of ideas from Assault in some respects, God only knows what the reputation of Assault will be another couple decades down the line. I'm scared it's already been a couple decades. But in this sweet spot where the franchise it belongs to is still trying to land with a new audience, I think it has something still worth taking into consideration, as the game that feels, even now, like the only Star Fox sequel. And I dare you to change that, Nintendo!
Bring my balls!